South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Well, in an effort to help businesses during a time of rising costs, the government has recently announced an enhanced support package which they can avail of. Minister of State with responsibility for business, employment and retail, Emer Higgins joins us now to discuss these supports and her plans for this ministerial portfolio. Minister, you were in Wexford recently visiting the local enterprise office. How was the visit?
Thanks a million for having me, Karl. Oh my God, it was absolutely brilliant. It's one of the best days I've had so far as Minister. I was hosted in County Council office by the new Chief Executive, Eddie Taff, and all of his management team, but also by the local enterprise office for Wexford, which of course is headed up by Breach Cosgrave. It's a really dynamic team, and they really had an amazing spread on offer in terms of getting the opportunity to meet so many local businesses and hear so many of the success stories that Wexford is producing in terms of entrepreneurs, so many of the new jobs that these entrepreneurs are producing, and really interesting as well to hear of different people changing their career paths. I heard of one lady who used to work in a multinational, and now she's a successful artist. So it's incredible to see how the local enterprise office can support entrepreneurs locally, can help job creation locally, and can also help people shape their life and follow their dreams. And really that was what I saw there loud and clear in terms of meeting the likes of the two entrepreneurs behind Sally and Juno, which is a really a sensory-friendly clothing line with all Oscalga branding on it, which I have to say was a really, really cool initiative to see. Being somebody who had sat on the Disability Matters Committee for the last 4 years, it's an area I'm particularly interested in, and it was great to see them develop autism and sensory-friendly clothing, which I think is going to be a huge hit. And for all of these small companies, there's just massive opportunity nowadays through the online sphere to become exporters. The local enterprise office is there to support companies of all sizes, whether they import or export or do neither. But it's always really good to see people taking their products, taking their brand, taking their idea and bringing it global. I definitely got a sense of that in Wexford, especially when I did my site visit to BioStore. And I have to say it was incredible to see the innovation that's happening from a science and a research perspective.
And Minister, of course, you entered politics following a corporate background and you worked for PayPal.
Yeah, I did indeed. So I suppose my own background really is very much business. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. Both of my parents had their own entrepreneur kind of experiences and experiments, and I worked myself in everything from hospitality to consultancy in Irish-owned firms for the first kind of 10 years of my career, and then went on to work in PayPal, based here in Dublin and also in Dundalk, where I was Chief of Staff for Global Operations for the European region. So I suppose really I feel I'm coming to this new role with a good lens, a good understanding of how businesses of all sizes work, what's important to business people, what's important to workers, what's important to entrepreneurs, and really that's the absolute focus I am bringing now to this department.
Minister, the government recently announced a new support package for businesses, but what can business owners avail of as part of this scheme?
Yeah, well, the increased cost of business grant, which is the grant that was announced earlier in the year, has now been extended. We actually had really good uptake in Wexford. 60% of businesses who are eligible have taken up the opportunity to draw down that grant. But that still means there's 40% of eligible businesses who haven't. So to facilitate them, we've now extended that deadline until the 29th of May. So really this is our final push, and we're asking businesses who have €30,000 or less of rates bill to just go online. Honestly, it couldn't be simpler. It's not even an application process, it's just a registration. So you will have gotten from Wexford County Council as a business owner, you will have gotten a letter that includes a PIN code. To go online, just enter your PIN code, submit your details, and let us in our department know what industry you're working in. And on foot of that, you'll get 50% of your rates bill back, up to €5,000. And then on top of that, to support retailers and hospitality, because we are really aware that at the moment retailers and hospitality are under a lot of pressure. And to support them, what we're going to do is give them a double payment. So if you're a retailer or a cafe or pub listening in that's already applied for your grant, and if you've already gotten it, you're going to get that same amount again automatically without having to register. And that's really just our commitment to helping to support retailers and hospitality through what we know is a difficult time. I mean, it's great to see. I was in Wexford recently, and it's great to see Wexford town bustling. It's great to see so many of the towns. I was in Enniscorthy afterwards as well. Great to see so much activity. And as a result of that, turnover is up for an awful lot of retailers and hospitality. But the reality is that even though turnover is up, profit margins are down, and that's because of the increases in costs. Everything from labour to the ingredients in a sandwich have all increased, and really this is about us as a government stepping in to support these businesses through this time.
And while supports for businesses are welcome, particularly at a time of record high business costs, which have been compounded by government through yearly increases to the minimum wage and increased sick pay entitlements, to name but a few. So does the support package go far enough in your opinion?
It's always going to be difficult to go far enough. And the reality is this support package that we've announced this week, we're operating within the parameters of last year's budget. So we're repurposing funds, we're going and finding additional money. Come this budget, when we're putting together our proposals ahead of it, that's really when we're going to see a bigger impact. You've mentioned some of the labour costs that have increased from a business perspective. And I suppose firstly, I'd just like to say that they're all actually progressive measures. They're all things that have helped from a workers' rights perspective. We want workers to be able to be able to have security, to know that if they're too sick to work, that they still get paid. And we want workers to be able to earn a good living here in Ireland. But I do appreciate that there's been a lot of changes and a lot of pressures on businesses kind of all coming together at once. So the likes of the significant increase that we had in January in the national minimum wage and the increase in sick days, and of course we have auto-enrolment coming down the track. So while these are all good, positive and progressive measures from a worker's perspective, I do appreciate that it's difficult for businesses to absorb these costs. And part of the measures that we've announced this week is that we're going to take a little bit of a step back, take a breath, take a pause and check and see. For example, with sick leave, we've asked the ESRI to do research onto this. And really what we want to see is it working currently? Is there anything we can do better? So we're using this time between now and the autumn to really assess the landscape and to check in and see what's the right thing to do, because ultimately we need to protect our businesses. Like, we need businesses to be profitable, because that's how we protect jobs. And that's the bottom line here, really. And so from my perspective as Minister, I want to make sure that measures, some of which the government has committed to, but that measures, whether or not we go ahead with them or not, are looked at from an SME perspective, are kind of sense checked, I suppose, to make sure that they really are going to work in practice in small and medium businesses in Wexford and right across the country. We have, of course, the Low Pay Commission, which the government has established, and it's up to the Low Pay Commission to make recommendations to us as to whether or not to change the minimum wage in January. But what my department has done is a big body of research in conjunction with the Department of Social Protection. And really it's an assessment of the cumulative impact of all of the changes that I've mentioned from a business perspective. So it's looking at the costs that is showing to a business. And I mean, they produced a heat map that showed very clearly that retailers and hospitality are feeling that pinch more than anyone. And that's why we have made the decision to double the increased cost of business grant to retailers and hospitality.
And Minister, while supports for businesses are welcome, I know that one of the criticisms that has been levelled at the support packages by industry bodies is that these short-term handouts do little to address the long-term viability of businesses. How would you respond to that?
Well, I suppose the long-term viability comes down to being able to trade profitably, and that's absolutely what we want to support businesses to do. We have, as you mentioned, we have introduced a lot of measures which are going to help from a cash flow perspective, which are going to have an immediate impact, things like changes to the PRSI, and those grants we spoke about, and there's additional support there in terms of businesses who want to go online. The trading online voucher, the innovation voucher scheme have all been doubled, and we're doing more in terms of lending for microfinancing. So there is an awful lot in this package, but I suppose those long-term measures that you talk about, sick leave, national minimum wage, those are things we're now taking stock of, using this time between now and kind of Q3, Q4 to assess whether or not these are things that businesses can cope with, and a decision will be made on them later in the year.
And just in relation to Microfinance Ireland, so you're increasing the lending limit from 25,000 to 50,000 euros. This happened again during COVID. So how long will this increase last for?
This will be from now until the budget, and in the budget we will be making additional changes as well. But really, you're right. I mean, it's up to €50,000 now, and that's great from both a cash flow perspective and also when it comes to expansion. And that's really what we're encouraging people to look at this for: expansion, but also an injection of cash in terms of innovation.
You've also widened the eligibility for the trading online voucher and also for the Digital for Business consultancy scheme. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I mean, really this is about ensuring that we're supporting businesses with up to 50 employees. The moment an awful lot of our grants and schemes are geared towards companies that employ under 10 or under 20 people. And what we wanted to do is make sure that as a company grows, they still have the opportunity to avail of supports like the Trading Online Voucher, which has now been doubled to €5,000, and the Digital for Business consultancy scheme.
And of course, you've just launched a new Ireland's Best Entrepreneur programme to encourage entrepreneurship and startups in underrepresented groups. Which specific groups are you going to focus on?
What we're hoping to focus on, I suppose, are female entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs in the STEM area, entrepreneurs right across the board. And I suppose we don't at this stage have we're not being prescriptive about this. What this is about is recognising Ireland's brightest and our best. And having been to Wexford so recently and met with so many entrepreneurs in Wexford, I think there's going to be an awful lot of Wexford people when it comes to this award in the run-up.
You've also made some changes to the energy efficiency grant scheme. What's happening there?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've increased the amount that a company can get towards their energy efficiency measures. So how this works is if you contact Wexford Local Enterprise Office and say you're interested in getting an energy efficiency audit, they'll come out, they'll help you assess your business and see what you need to do from an energy efficiency perspective. Up until recently, we had a 50% grant available for any of the capital investment to make your business more energy efficient. And obviously, in the long run, that's really beneficial for companies because they're making it back on their energy bills. But we've now increased that grant right up to 75%. So now companies only have to pay for 25% of those energy efficiency measures up to the value of €10,000 as that grant.
The retail sector, of course, comes under your own brief also. From that perspective, in an era where retail is not only competing against other providers, they're now having to battle online sites. So what are you going to do to assist those retailers become more focused in that regard?
Well, listen, part of it is that an awful lot of retailers now have the opportunity to take advantage of that online market. And really that's why we're pushing things like our Trading Online Voucher, which has now been doubled to €5,000, because an awful lot of retailers do actually sell online. And I suppose when you think of somewhere like Wexford, where you have a huge tourism industry and a lot of people might be coming in, up and down and spending maybe 2 weeks there over the summer. But if they like a particular clothing line in one of your local shops, they're exactly the kind of people who would look that up when they go home and make those purchases online. So I think there's a real opportunity for Wexford traders to get online if they're not already, and the Trading Online Voucher is available to assist them in doing that.
The big message that I'm hearing from industry bodies and business organisations is they're calling on the government to press the pause button when it comes to introducing measures, whether those are in relation to increasing minimum wages or indeed in relation to bringing in further changes to employment legislation. There have been a huge amount of changes in the employment landscape in the past 2 years. What's planned over the next year or two in that regard?
Listen, you're right. I'm meeting with businesses up and down the country, and this is the really big thing that I'm hearing. I'm hearing we want certainty. We want to know what, if anything, is coming down the tracks. So in response to that, and it's something that the Taoiseach Simon Harrister and Minister Peter Burke have been really, really strong on, we've now committed to the SME test being rolled out. So basically, if you can imagine at the moment, any decision that comes before Cabinet, any policy decision, any legislative decision, any statutory instrument that comes before Cabinet, all of these are currently tested against three things. They're tested against the cost to the Exchequer. They're tested to make sure there's no implications for the peace process. And they're tested from a jobs perspective to make sure that they make sense from a jobs perspective. Now we're going to introduce a fourth test, and that is going to be that every cabinet decision is sense checked against an SME test. And basically that's just about making sure that we're stress testing all decisions, no matter what department they're coming from, and looking at them from an SME lens. And really that's about making sure that, firstly, there's no unforeseen consequences to businesses from something that a minister in a different department might be introducing, but it's also about providing certainty for businesses and enabling them to plan better. For me, I think this is a really important one. Having worked in business myself, I appreciate how frustrating uncertainty is for businesses, and I want to provide certainty so that we have an economic climate that fosters entrepreneurship, that supports businesses to plan, to grow, to prosper, to maintain and create jobs.
And Minister, of course, you have quite a broad brief under the Department of Enterprise. So what are your key priorities between now and Budget Day?
It's all about supporting businesses. It's all about listening to businesses, hearing their feedback, bringing that feedback back to the Cabinet to make sure that we're doing our bit for them ahead of the budget. So Minister Peter Burke and I were really clear. We did not want to wait until the budget to intervene. We wanted to provide supports to businesses now. Again, I would just like to encourage anyone who hasn't availed of the increased cost of doing business grant to go and do that, because this is money back into your business, and that's so important. My brief is all about jobs. It's all about protecting jobs. It's all about growing our industry, growing our economy, growing and nurturing our entrepreneurs. And that's something I'm really excited to do. I'm really passionate about, and something I really am so focused on.
What's the likelihood of a further package of supports between now and Budget Day for businesses across the country?
This is it between now and Budget Day. This is our package. And on Budget Day, we will be announcing further measures.
What advice do you have for any business owners listening this morning?
I suppose keep on going. I think businesses right across Wexford and right across the country do incredible work. I know it's hard work, and I'd just like to thank them for the contribution they're playing to the local economy, to local society, because many of them are providing really important local services to people too. But also to say that it's because of their work. They are the backbone. It's SMEs that are the backbone of our Irish economy. 70% of people who are employed by Irish SMEs. And because of their work, they are putting the likes of Wexford and the likes of Ireland on the map globally. So thank you.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Minister Emer Higgins, and I'd like to thank the Minister for joining us on this morning's show, and I would certainly urge all eligible businesses to avail of these supports.
South East Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.